Good morning, Richard Calhoun, Creekside Realty. We're here to discuss Silicon Valley and the greater Northern California real estate marketplace. We'll come back to this page at the end. Here is a quick summary of the heat maps that we'll jump right into, and we'll summarize it at the end, but that's a recap for those that are familiar with the presentation. Here is the active inventory compared to the 10-year median. If you have low inventory, you favor the seller, which would be red in color, red hot marketplace. You can see Santa Clara County is basically at a low of 26% of the 10-year median, all the way up to 67%. Then the expensive areas are at basically right at 100%. San Mateo County is just shy of 100% on inventory for a lot of the area. The coast has a shortage of 56%, so it's only got half the inventory that you normally expect. In the North San Mateo area only has 60% of the inventory you'd expect. The other side of the equation is what's happening with offers. Well, offers are also low. Low number of offers tend to favor the buyer. The real key is the balance between the two, which I measure in days of unsold inventory. The days of unsold inventory in Santa Clara County is less than it typically is based on the 10-year median, which would be a faster paced marketplace, which would tend to favor the seller. San Mateo County is the exact opposite, where it's a slower paced marketplace, a higher than normal expected DUI. And unfortunately for Alameda County, I don't have the 10-year median data yet. Now we're flipping over and looking at just the raw data. So this is the data, just raw count. How long would it take to sell the inventory at the existing rate of sales? And you can see Santa Clara County is basically below 3 weeks. You go up into San Mateo County, it's basically right around 5 weeks. You go over to Alameda County and it's right at 3 weeks. You can see that Santa Clara County is a little bit redder, followed by Alameda County, and San Mateo County is the palest. And you can obviously see the expensive areas in San Mateo County are blue, 113 days, which is getting up there. The expensive areas in Santa Clara County are white in color because they're sort of in the balanced marketplace. They're at 55 days. What is that? Just about 7 weeks. And basically, it's in the middle of what I call a balanced marketplace, neither favoring the buyer nor the seller. For all those that are having a little time understanding days of unsold inventory and what that really means, this is looking at simply the time on the marketplace, but instead of looking at the average, which has the drawback of being impacted by one seller selling after being on the market for a long time, or the median, which is a very stringent criteria, this is looking at the 75th percentiles, the third quadrant of the seller. So the long typical seller, 75% of the sellers are selling faster than this, 25% of the sellers are taking longer. In Santa Clara County, you're basically at 2 weeks. Alameda County, you're a little bit under 2 weeks. And in San Mateo County, you're 3 to 6 weeks. There's quite a bit of differentiation. You can see that differentiation on the color. Again, the expensive areas are doing the slowest at 90 days, which is going to be 13 weeks. Now, this data is the same data, but presented slightly differently than in the past. In the past, I plotted what percent of the asking price was compared to the original asking price. So what percentage, it would be typically 99%. That was pretty hard to see. So now I've gone and subtracted it off. So this is actually the amount of the reductions the sellers have done. And you can see the percentages are fairly small. The greatest one I'm seeing is 4.5% in the expensive areas in San Mateo County. The least I'm seeing right now, they're all negative. And I guess it's this, here's a negative 0.2%. There were just a couple of weeks ago where a few of the micro market areas actually where sellers were raising their asking price, and that would show up as a positive price adjustment. And negative price adjustment is the sellers have reduced their price. This is a very tight criteria, and the reason it's such a tight criteria is the bulk of the sellers do a lot of homework before putting their house on the marketplace, and they're serious about selling, so they put their house on the market at market value, and they don't need to adjust the price. This is the frequency of those price reductions. So now we were looking at the magnitude, and now you're looking at like how common is our price reductions. And in Santa Clara County, you can see you're right above 10% for a lot of the micro market areas. The more expensive areas is getting up around 20%. You go into San Mateo County, you're around 15%. Alameda County is some of the lowest numbers, probably in single digits for the most part. The highest numbers are somewhere around 12%. And Oakland and Berkeley are sort of a unique thing, is they're doing price reductions, as you can see from this slide, but they're also having the most overbidding going on. So they probably have two different marketplaces up there. This is the magnitude of overbidding. So now we're looking at what the buyers are doing in order to try to ensure that they get the property. This is the average overbid with everybody in a blender. So including the ones that negotiate a price down, including those that negotiate the price up. This is the average magnitude of overbidding. And this is what I was talking about in Oakland and Berkeley. They're 13 and 18%. So they were taking ask price reductions, but yet the overbidding in those two micro market areas is the most significant. Santa Clara County is right around 7%, would be the number I'd pick for the bulk of the county. Again, the expensive areas are quite a bit less, around 2%, not even. You go up into San Mateo County and you're around 3 to 5%. And you go over into Alameda County and you're around 7% again, with the exception of Oakland and Berkeley being way up there. This is the frequency of overbidding. How common is overbidding? And you can see in Santa Clara County, almost 80%, 2/3 to 85% of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. Again, the expensive areas are quite a bit lower, around 50%. You go up into San Mateo County expensive areas and you're down around a third. The coast is at 8%. So only 1 out of 12 sellers is getting more than they're asking on the San Mateo County coast. The Bay City, sort of the heart of San Mateo County, is right around 50 to 2/3 of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. And you go over into Alameda County and it's roughly 75% to 85% of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. So again, Alameda County is doing the strongest in that benchmark. This is the appreciation. And again, here it's slightly different presentation than I've done in the past. I used to have the 100% for the original price. Now I'm just showing the percent appreciation. So for example, South County has 66% appreciation. That means the home is 1 2/3 times what it used to be, but it's only 66% appreciation. San Mateo County is clearly on the cool side, from 33% appreciation to 50% appreciation, which still is not bad when you're talking about only 8 years. But you compare that to, say, Santa Clara County, the affordable areas that are up around 80%, or if you go into the bulk of Alameda County at 80%. And I think what's going on here is, in recent years with the pandemic, people are willing to commute further because they're not commuting in every day, for example, and therefore the outlying areas have saw more demand increases in price. The increase in price recently relates to the highest overall appreciation. And that's why you're seeing the heart of Silicon Valley, where the jobs are at least used to be located, is the coolest appreciation, the least amount of appreciation. And without exception that I'm seeing, the outlying areas have the highest rate of appreciation. Now we're looking at the sold price. Instead of just following the median, which is the middle number, I also follow the 10 percentile, which is the cheapest 10% in the geographical area, as well as the most expensive 10% or the 90 percentile in each of the 20 geographical areas and the micro market areas. This allows the buyer to get a range of the prices of the homes that are available in that area. Now here's the summary. So you can see inventory is below where you normally expect, which favors the seller. The offers are also below where you'd expect them to be, which favors the buyer. The ratio between the two depends on which county you're in. Santa Clara County is favoring the seller. San Mateo County is favoring the buyer. DUI overall, we're still in a fairly hot marketplace. Most of them are shades of pink. It's not as red as it was earlier in the year, which was indicative of a slowing down marketplace. The expensive areas are clearly the slowest areas. You can see 55 to 95 to 113 days in the three most expensive areas in the Silicon Valley area. The time on marketplace, 75th percentile, you can see again, the more expensive areas tend to have a little bit longer period of time on the marketplace. The cheaper, more outlying areas are the areas that are currently moving more rapidly. Here's the price reductions that we were talking about, and you can see they're fairly small in magnitude, but I would still say that a 4.5% price reduction for all the sellers combined is fairly significant. That means when only half the sellers are doing a price reduction, the half the sellers that are doing a price reduction are doing a 10% price reduction. The frequency of the price reductions, and you can see none of them are at 50%, they're closer to 20%, which makes that example even more extreme. Then you flip over and look at overbids. This is the magnitude of overbidding, the frequency of overbidding, the appreciation since 2015, the price, and then also the payment at the end. Now what we're doing is just looking at Silicon Valley, which is all those micro markets, all 20 micro markets in a blender, which is all of San Mateo County, Santa Clara County, and Alameda County. And we're looking at the three components. We're looking at inventory. Inventory is only 56% of where you'd expect it to be, but the number of offers are almost at 70% of where you'd expect it to be. They're both lower than you'd expect, but the number of offers are higher than the number of inventory. Therefore, your DUI, the speed of the marketplace, is only 81% of where you'd expect it to be at this time of the year. This is sort of trying to emphasize the lack of volume that we're currently experiencing. 2023, we only sold 1,873 homes. Our previous low was only last year at 2,100. So we're only at 2/3 of the 10-year previous low. And on the 25-year previous low, we're at 88.9% of the previous record low. This is the payments updated for last week's interest rate and price adjustments. And you can see that the median price and all three prices are higher than they were back at the previous peak of the marketplace, no matter when you call the peak. Now we're going to be looking at the ask price reductions. The huge advantage of this indicator is you're seeing what the sellers are needing to do to get an offer accepted without waiting for escrows to close. We're starting off a year ago, and we'll jump for 9 months. We'll do monthly data, and most of the monthly data will be in dotted lines. Then we'll go to dashed lines, which are mostly weekly data, and then we'll go to solid lines, which are weekly data more recently. So here we go. You can see the line that's bold is the current week. So now we're 10 weeks. And at 5 and right there, that's the peak. You can see the market has cooled off for the last 4 weeks. And that's not atypical for this time of the year. Typically, the strongest marketplace we have are essentially the month of May, the 5 weeks before Memorial Day. Now we're flipping over and doing essentially the exact same thing, but looking at the overbids. This you have to wait for escrow to close. So when we get to the current week, you'll see that there hasn't been the same downturn that we saw in ask price reductions. But we're starting a year ago, and we're going to go monthly until we get to 3 weeks, and then we shift over and go weekly from there. So here we go. You can see the lines are right here. There's sort of the bottom of the marketplace. Now we've been at a plateau for several weeks and several months, and you see no decline whatsoever, and the decline may start showing up in a week or two. Here's looking at the active inventory. Here, what we're doing is looking at all 3 counties, but we're looking at, based on the last 10 years, what's the most inventory you'd expect, and that's the blue line up here. That's the 90 percentile of the inventory you'd expect. Here's the exact inventory, the median inventory you'd expect at 3,100 homes. The least inventory you'd expect is 1,985, and in fact, we're down here at 1,745. More than 10% short of the least inventory you'd expect to have at this time of the year. The reason for putting the expectation lines on there is so you can see the annual cycle of the real estate market, which is pretty pronounced. And then you can see the relative gap. For example, going from the red to the gray is 40% change, i.e. going from 10% to 50%. Going from the gray line to the blue line is also a 40% change from 50% to 90%, and it's nonlinear. By having the extremes on there, I'm hoping to give you some idea of how strong the marketplace is. Is it, typical right on the black line? Is it red hot right on the red line? Is it hotter than a red hot marketplace? And based on the lack of inventory, buyers right now have less choice than they typically do. Now we're looking at offers. So this is the number of offers accepted in the past 5 weeks. And you can see the number of offers accepted is below the least you'd expect. The least you'd expect is almost 2,100, and we're basically just below 1,900. Again, about 10% below the level of offers that the least number of offers you'd expect. The typical offers you'd be expecting right now is almost 2,700. So we're almost 1,000 units short of where we'd expect, about 2/3 in rough numbers. Now we're looking at days of unsold inventory. The hottest marketplace you'd expect is down here at 27. The typical you'd expect is up here at 40. The slowest marketplace you'd expect is up here at 47. We're sitting here at 33. So we're basically halfway between a red hot marketplace and the typical marketplace. 33 days is a fairly aggressive marketplace. I consider 40 to 80 to be a balanced marketplace where neither the seller nor the buyer really has an advantage over the other. This is the DUI versus the typical. If you were having the exact typical days of unsold inventory, you'd be right on the black line. Just this week, I added the red, and that's to indicate below the black line is a hotter marketplace and above is a cooler marketplace, because that's going to flip depending on what indicator we're looking at. Right now, the days on unsold inventory is only 81% of what it typically is for this time of the year. Time on the marketplace is a lot easier for some consumers to understand. We're right now at 16, which is exactly matched to the coolest you'd expect. Typical is 21, so we're selling homes 5 days faster, which is actually 25% faster than you would expect for this time of the year. And we're selling it in 3/5, 60% of the time than if we were in a slow marketplace. In other words, we're selling in 15 days essentially instead of in 25 days. Days on market is faster, which is below the median, and that would favor the seller, which would be the red marketplace, which is why the red line at the bottom. Now we're looking at the average ask price reductions. I did not get this graph changed, so instead of showing 1%, it's showing 99%. This should be a -1%. Typical would be -0.8%. The least you'd expect is -0.4. The most you'd expect is -0.16. I will eventually shift over because I believe the negative and the small percentage is a better presentation of the actual data. Sellers are right now taking almost 20% more price reductions than they typically are. Again, the typical would be right on the black line. The blue line up here is favoring the buyers. 20% more price reductions would be favoring the buyer. This is the frequency of ask price reductions. How common is a seller reducing their price? You can see the number looks like it's 14.1, typical is 14.4. So it's right there, right where you'd expect the number of sellers to be reducing the price. In a hot marketplace, you'd expect only 11% of the sellers to be reducing their price, and in a cool marketplace, you'd expect 25%. The frequency of price reductions is almost right on normal, 96% of normal, so slightly down. Slightly down is slightly favoring the sellers, slightly less frequent price reductions. This is the magnitude of overbidding. So now we're looking at what the buyers are doing, and we're at 107%. Typically, we're at 106.5%. So basically right at where you'd expect it to be. In a hot marketplace at this time of year would be 9% above, and a cool marketplace would be 4% above, and we're basically at 7% above. This is the frequency of overbidding. How common is it for the buyer to overbid? You can see in a cool marketplace, it's down at 57%. We're basically very typical right now at 69. We're right now at 71. I would call that sort of a match. The hottest you'd expect is for 77% of the buyers to be overbidding when they're trying to secure a property. Here's looking at the price of the Silicon Valley, all three counties on log paper. We're right now at $15.85. I will make a comment a little bit about Silicon Valley's median price. We're now looking at the active inventory. Now we're looking at the three counties. So now we started off looking at the micro market area, then we started looking at Silicon Valley in a whole. Now we're looking at county by county. So we're looking at the three counties that make up Silicon Valley, which is Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, and Alameda County. And the real takeaway, in my opinion, is you look at San Mateo County down here, and it's got roughly the right amount of inventory. But now if you look at Alameda and Santa Clara, and let's do them separately since there is starting to be quite a bit of difference. Santa Clara County's got 600 listings right now, and coming back here to a typical year, you'd expect somewhere around 1,200. So Santa Clara County has about half the inventory you'd expect it to be. Alameda County is at 720, and you might pick the number up here somewhere around 1,500. So again, it's roughly 50% of the inventory you'd expect. The two large counties, Santa Clara County and Alameda County, have a huge inventory at 50%. San Mateo County is coming in at about 100% of where you'd expect it to be. So when you put that in a blender, that's where you get about the 2/3 of the inventory you'd expect it to be. Offers accepted, you can see that San Mateo County is down a little bit. Alameda County and Santa Clara County are down more, but in part that's because of the lack of inventory, most likely at this point. Days on unsold inventory, you can see that Santa Clara County is the fastest at 27, Alameda County is next at 34, and San Mateo County is the slowest at 42 days of unsold inventory. There's a fairly significant difference between taking 42 days to sell your inventory and taking only 27 days to sell your inventory. Days on marketplace, sort of same pattern. Santa Clara County is the fastest at 18, Alameda next at 20, and San Mateo County coming in a distant third at 30 days. And when you start realizing that a lot of sellers keep their house on the market for a week just to make sure they get exposure, if you subtracted 7 off of this, you're really going from 11 and 13 to 23. So you're almost doubling the time frame. The difference between 18 and 20 and 30 is more than you may intuitively initially think. This is the magnitude of list price reductions taken by the seller. And again, I have not subtracted the 100%. So this is really a 1.4% reduction for San Mateo County. So they're taking the biggest reductions. Alameda County and Santa Clara County are at the same at 0.9% reduction. So less than 1% reduction. This is the frequency of seller reducing price. Exact same pattern. Santa Clara County and Alameda County coming in pretty close together, right around 13%, both sides of 13%. And San Mateo County quite a bit higher at 18.5%. And again, 18.5% may not sound like a lot, but when you compare it to 13, 18.5% is almost a 50% increase over the 13 for the two larger counties. The big takeaway is clearly something's different in San Mateo County than in Santa Clara County and Alameda County, and I think that's pretty clear from the data. Now you look at the overbid. San Mateo County comes in third place at 104%, so 4% overbidding, followed by Santa Clara County at 5%. And here, Alameda County really shines with almost 10% overbidding going on, 9.6% above the seller's asking price. Frequency of overbidding, the same pattern. Alameda County is way on top at 78% of the sellers getting more than their asking price, followed by Santa Clara at 70%, and San Mateo County coming in a distant third at 60%. Don't get me wrong, 60% of the sellers are still getting more than their asking price, but it's not anything compared to 78%. So now we're looking at the appreciation of the three counties. Santa Clara County is at 85% appreciation, Alameda County at 76% appreciation, followed by San Mateo County at 63.4% appreciation. And that's since the last 9 months of 2015. Now we're looking at the median sold price. This does look like it's updated, 1880 for San Mateo County, 1780 for Santa Clara County, and 1300 for Alameda County. So 1.3 million for Alameda County, 1.8 million for Santa Clara County, and 1.9 million for San Mateo County. Same information, just on regular paper for those that prefer. Here is the payments: $14,700, $13,900, and $10,200. And those are just estimates using the average interest rates for the United States, and frequently you can do better than that. Here is the three counties, the actual raw numbers. So you have Alameda County, San Mateo County, and Santa Clara County. Your number of new listings, fairly significant drop in San Mateo County, almost a 10% drop, 7.5% number of new listings coming on the market in San Mateo County. Total inventory available increased in Santa Clara County and Alameda County, decreased in San Mateo County. Decrease in offers accepted, DUI, is sort of the balance between the two, roughly unchanged. A somewhat a significant increase of 2 days in Alameda County. It takes about 5 days to really catch my attention, and being at 34 days, that's still fairly aggressive. Santa Clara County is the fastest at 27 days of unsold inventory. And then you have your closed information at the bottom. Now we're leaving Santa Clara County and we're going to the Greater Bay Area. The Greater Bay Area is 13 counties looked at in 5 regions. The first region is Silicon Valley, San Francisco Marin, the cities, the North Bay, the Central Valley, and the Central Coast. And we're going to go in the quick reverse order. And this is the numbers. And I want to point out right now that San Mateo County is up here at 1,880,000. It's the most expensive, followed by Santa Clara County at 1,780,000, $100,000 separated. Silicon Valley, though, the three counties combined at 1,585,000, is actually higher than the San Francisco and Marin, the cities area that are combined. And I think we'll get to see that combined number in a little bit, but I think it's a 1575. It's close. It's only separated by $10,000, but the fact that Silicon Valley is more expensive than San Francisco and Marin is not that common, and I think this is the only second time that I've noticed it. Here we're looking at the Greater Bay Area inventory, and we talked about the shortage of inventory, but if we think we have a shortage in Silicon Valley, look at the shortage in the North Bay and the Central Valley. Their number is typically up here somewhere around 4,500 active listings, and they're down here right now at 2,100, which would be less than half. And for the Central Valley, they're at just over 1,600, just shy of 1,700. About a third of the inventory you'd expect in the Central Valley. That's a huge difference. We were commenting on Silicon Valley going from 1,700 here, from whatever number that you normally expect, somewhere around 2,800 or 3,000 potentially. So less than a 50% drop. And then you go into Central Valley and it's a 66% drop. That's huge. So there's just a lack of inventory in the Central Valley compared to what there normally is. And then you have the San Mateo, San Francisco Marin, and Central Coast down at the bottom, just two smaller regions. Now we're looking at the number of offers accepted. Silicon Valley's had the most offers, followed by North Bay, followed by Central Valley. A lot of this has to do with size. You can see they're normally grouped together. And then the Central Coast and the cities are much smaller in size of number of units that we sell typically in a given week, in a given year. This is the unsold inventory. You can see Silicon Valley is the fastest marketplace at 33, followed by the Central Valley at 36, followed by the North Bay at 42, followed by the cities at 48, and the Central Coast is coming in last at 58. And that's sort of the normal pecking order here. You can see the Central Coast has always been the slowest area, and Silicon Valley's always been the fastest. But what's actually noteworthy right now is the Central Valley, which is sort of in the middle of the pack typically, is giving Silicon Valley a run for its money. These numbers are much closer together than they typically are. Here's the 75th percentile of the sellers on the marketplace. So where is it taking the fastest? Santa Clara County at 16 days, Central Valley at 19, and then the other three are close together. One of them, I think it's the North Bay, is at 32, and then the remaining two, the San Francisco and the Central Coast, are at 34, or both at 34. They're overprinting each other. Price reductions. San Francisco is doing the most price reductions at 2.1%. I could not get the Central Coast discount to show up, but it's somewhere around 1.7%. Then you have Santa Clara, Silicon Valley, and the North Bay coming in at 1% and 0.9%, and coming in with the least reductions is the Central Valley with 0.7% reduction. This is the frequency of sellers reducing their price, most frequently in the Central Coast, least frequently in Silicon Valley. The others are pretty close together, right at 20% for the most part. Here is the magnitude of overbidding. You can see Silicon Valley has the most overbidding at 107. And even though San Francisco was not doing well on other categories, the amount of overbidding is coming in second at 106%. Alameda County, the overbidding is 2.4%. And you might wonder, the frequency is way up and yet the magnitude isn't. Why is that? And I suspect what's driving it is buyers that are going to the Central Valley and the Alameda area are going there for affordability. So they'll throw a few extra dollars at a home to try to get it, but they're not going to throw tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars at a home to try to get it that we see in Silicon Valley. Because their budget criteria is more driving their real estate marketplace, the amount that they're able to overbid is reduced. And Central Coast is the least at 0.7% above the asking price. This is the frequency of overbidding, most common in Silicon Valley, followed by the San Franciscos, followed by North Bay, followed by Central Valley, and Central Coast is the least common. Basically the common theme is Silicon Valley is the most aggressive, Central Coast is the least aggressive, and the Central Valley is surprisingly aggressive now because of the commute options. This is the appreciation for the 5 regions. You can see that the cities has really pulled down since the pandemic and now is in last place by far at 33.5% appreciation. That's the appreciation they basically had back in 2020. So they basically had no appreciation the last several years. You look at your other outlying areas and they've seen quite a bit of price appreciation. And it's sort of interesting, the Central Coast, even though it's slow, has the most appreciation up here at 99.7% appreciation. The Central Valley is in second at 84%, and Silicon Valley is in third at 83%. And then the North Bay is in fourth at 70%. So the real takeaway is San Francisco and Marin has just plummeted compared to the other 4 regions. This is looking at the greater sold price, and here you can actually see the numbers that I was talking about, and I was correct. It's the San Francisco Marin combined is $10,000 lower than Silicon Valley, and that has not happened since 2014. But now we're touching, we're flipped. The lines are clearly merged. Central Coast down here having the 3rd highest sold price. North Bay, 4th highest, and the most affordable area still is the Central Valley. at $535,000 for the typical home. Here is the payments. The payments are reversed for Silicon Valley because based on the price, the interest rates are the same and the formula is the same. So there's a little $100 a month more expensive now in Silicon Valley than San Francisco and Marin. Then the order is going to be the same, Central Coast, North Bay, and Central Valley being the most affordable on a monthly basis. And with that, the green URL is what I call my root URL. That gets you to the archive on YouTube. If you want to join me Saturday morning and ask questions, interact, you just add in the year 2023 to the end of the green URL. For the handout, which is posted, I got it up about 5 minutes before the hour. My goal is 15 minutes before the hour. You just add in the H for handout, the year 2023, the month 07, the date 22, and for any particular episode, you just add in the year, month, date code without the letter H. I'm Richard Calhoun, Creekside Realty. My contact information, and does anyone have any questions? Not seeing any questions, I'll call it a week. Thanks for joining. Take care. Bye for now.